Hi, I'm Edward, and welcome to Marxists at the Movies. I'm proud to introduce this project, created with the help of my AI team. You won't be hearing my voice just yet. Instead, two AI hosts will guide you through the stories, struggles, and revolutionary sparks hidden in the films we know and love. Thanks for being here, and enjoy the show.
This is the Marxists at the Movies podcast.
Scene opens, white lights dim down low. The cinema whispers where truths can grow. From shadows deep and screens ignite, the proletariat comes alive tonight. Tonight, Marxists at the movies, bright and raw, breaking through the reels to rewrite the law. Workers of the world in every frame, changing the credits, rewriting the name.
Welcome, comrade, to Marxists at the Movies. We're the only film criticism show probably brave enough to wield the sickle of truth against the silver screen, or, well, in this case, maybe the smaller one.
That's right. We're your comrades in cinematic critique, always ready to dissect the bourgeois propaganda, one scene at a time.
And for International Workers' Month, we're really excited to present the special bonus series we're calling TV Spotlight.
Yeah, tonight we're plunging, like headfirst into the class struggle as you see it depicted in...
Oh, you're about to find out.
Okay, now, just a word of caution, fellow cinephiles. We will be getting into plot points here.
Definitely spoilers ahead.
So if you haven't yet experienced the means of production behind this particular piece of television, well, now's your chance to seize the means of skipping ahead.
But you'll be missing out on some pretty good dialectical analysis, just saying.
You really will. Tonight, we're kicking off a really fascinating exploration. We're going to trace the career path, the trajectory of Kathy Griffin.
And that's going to lead us right into a deep dive on this article, Kathy Griffin, My Revolution on the D-List. It's actually by our very own Edward Michael Francis.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, and we'll be pulling in some other supporting sources too. Our mission, really, is to try and understand how her whole journey kind of illuminates this really complex dance between fame and class and visibility.
Right, especially within the entertainment industry, which, let's be honest, can be a pretty exploitative landscape.
Totally.
And we've got a good pile of sources here, comrade. Like you said, beyond Edward's really insightful article, we're looking at a bunch of video transcripts, interviews, clips with Griffin herself.
Right.
And also some key biographical stuff from IMDb.
Yeah.
It's quite a lot of material. Personal stories, sharp takes on the industry, critical insights. It should let us really unpack what was going on.
Okay, so let's just dive right in then. We're not just looking at, a comedian who had a hit reality show. That's not the point here.
Not at all.
What we're trying to uncover, I think, is how Kathy Griffin, through her work, but maybe most importantly through My Life on the D-List, actually delivered this surprisingly powerful commentary.
See, like a critique.
Exactly, a commentary on the whole nature of fame, right? The really rigid class structures you find in Hollywood, and just how hyper-visible everything is, but also how exclusionary it can be. The whole entertainment machine.
Absolutely. We're going to map out her path, like from her early years right up to where she is now. We'll be paying close attention to the really clever ways she carved out this unique spot for herself.
Which she often did by directly challenging the rules, right? The norms, the hierarchies that really run Hollywood.
Exactly. So, comrade, where does this story start? This narrative of comedic resistance?
Well, Kathy Griffin's origin story, it starts in the Chicago suburbs. Kind of a working class background, really. Born into this big Irish-American family. She had 3 older brothers, an older sister. That was her early environment. Then, after she graduated high school, Oak Park River Forest High School, I think it was.
Right.
The family moved out to California. Her parents retired. It's kind of that classic chasing the American dream sort of move.
Makes sense.
But apparently, even when she was young, back in Illinois, she was already showing this leaning towards comedy, like telling jokes to guests at parties when she was just a kid.
You know what's interesting there, comrade, is you can already see the performer emerging, right? Even in those little details.
Yeah, that drive to connect, to get a reaction through humor.
Exactly. Becomes this sort of foundational thing, like a building block for her whole career later on. And the move to L.A., well, that's the classic story, isn't it? The hopeful artist heads to the big city, the dream factory.
Right. And when she got to L.A., this glittering city, it wasn't like she just instantly became a star, was it?
No, definitely not.
She jumped into the deep end, really. Improv comedy. She trained with the Groundlings, which is a pretty prestigious group.
Oh, yeah, legendary.
So that period was all about sharpening her comedic instincts, right? Finding her own voice in that really collaborative, intense, sometimes high-pressure environment.
Totally. The Groundlings is like a boot camp for comedians.
Yeah.
It demands super quick wit, being adaptable, building comedy on the fly with other people. That training was absolutely crucial for her. It laid the groundwork for what came next, which was stand-up.
Yeah, the stand-up circuit. That's where she really started, paying her dues, as they say.
Right. Hitting the clubs.
Exactly. Grinding it out in all those stand-up clubs night after night, honing her material in those, dimly lit rooms. That was her path. Taking those smaller stages, working on her jokes, building that direct connection with a live audience.
That's the quintessential comedian's journey, really.
And it was in those places, those often pretty unpretentious venues, that people in the industry started to notice her bit by bit.
And that direct connection with a live crowd, comrade, that's everything for a comedian. It's the ultimate testing ground for your jokes.
Right.
You find out what works, what doesn't. You shape your stage persona.
You get immediate feedback.
Immediate, yeah. Those tough years on the circuit, they're the proving ground. And for Griffin, it was definitely key in sharpening her edge, finding her unique viewpoint.
Okay, so the next big step in her career, this unfolding story, was moving into television. Specifically, she got a role on that NBC sitcom, Suddenly Susan.
Oh, yes.
Word.
With Brick Shields.
That's the one. And that was a big step towards getting wider recognition, reaching more people than just the stand-up crowds. It was a chance to connect with a huge audience, even if it was inside the pretty conventional box of a network sitcom, a part of the mainstream machine.
Right. That sitcom role gave her a kind of mainstream visibility that stand-up, at least at that point, just couldn't match.
A different kind of exposure.
Totally different. And a different way of performing, too.
Yeah.
Working with a script, being part of a cast. It was a step, maybe kind of an ironic one looking back, towards that A-list world she'd later spend so much time chasing and making fun of.
Which brings us perfectly, comrade, to the main focus of our deep dive tonight. That groundbreaking Bravo reality series, Kathy Griffin, My Life on the D-List.
Yes, the D-List.
Ran from 2005 to 2010. And this is exactly where our comrade Edward Michael Francis, in his article, Kathy Griffin, My Revolution on the D-List, argues there's something much deeper, much more subversive going on, like a critical look at fame itself.
Indeed, comrade. Edward's article really nails it, I think.
Yeah.
He frames My Life on the D-List as something way beyond your typical shallow celebrity reality TV.
Right.
He argues, and it's a strong argument, that it works as a subversive, self-aware deconstruction of fame, power, and the arbitrary hierarchy of celebrity culture in late-stage capitalism.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite a statement.
It is. It's bold. But honestly, when you really dig into the show, what it showed, the themes running underneath, it actually stands up to that kind of serious analysis.
Okay, so maybe for some of our listeners who weren't glued to Bravo back then, what was the basic idea behind this revolutionary show?
Well, at its core, the show just followed Kathy Griffin. Right? It tracked her seemingly endless, often really funny, almost Sisyphean struggle.
Yeah, pushing the boulder uphill.
Exactly. Pushing the boulder up the slippery slope from being on the D-list her own term, mostly trying to get to that coveted, almost mythical A-list status in Hollywood.
But, and this is the key thing Edward's article points out, she wasn't just trying to climb the ladder.
No.
She was simultaneously, and often really sharply, making fun of the whole system while she was trying to navigate it, launching these satirical attacks on its foundations.
Precisely, comrade. The brilliance, the irony of it is that dual nature, it shows her real, often frustrating attempts to get status.
Which she clearly wanted on some level.
Right. But she's also publicly mocking that very status with her trademark wit. She's basically pulling back the curtain on all the absurd rituals, the random gatekeeping, the power dynamics that define celebrity culture.
All while trying to play the game herself.
Exactly. It's this amazing kind of dangerous tightrope walk, always negotiating between playing along and pointing out how ridiculous it all is.
And the show had this structure, didn't it? It felt in a weird way almost like a sitcom.
Yeah, it did have that feel.
It had this regular cast of characters in Kathy's world, her orbit, interacting in funny, predictable ways. Plus, you had the celebrity cameos sprinkled throughout, which you kind of expect. Edward's article even lays out this helpful character list, highlighting the key people who are part of Kathy's life on and off screen.
That sitcom-like structure is so important, comrade. It's key to why it was so popular, but also to its subversive side. By having these recurring figures, her family, her staff, the show, built up this real feeling of intimacy.
You felt like you knew them.
Exactly. And it allowed for ongoing jokes and dynamics that went way beyond just Kathy meeting some random celebrity each week. These regulars were the anchor, grounding Kathy's often crazy pursuits in actual human relationships.
So let's talk about some of these key cast members, as Edward calls them. First, obviously, Kathy Griffin herself.
The star of the show.
Edward's article sums her up perfectly, I think. He calls her the sharp-tongued, relentlessly hustling star who uses her arsenal comedy, controversy, and that trademark D-list honesty to challenge fame culture from within.
That phrase, D-list honesty, that feels like the absolute core of her appeal, doesn't it? And the show's power.
Totally. Her willingness to just be candid, to talk openly about the stuff that isn't glamorous, the industry realities, her own struggles, her setbacks, her outsider view on how Hollywood actually works.
It's what set her apart, comrade. Completely apart from the polished, carefully managed images you usually get from celebrities. It's this raw, potent kind of authenticity that just clicks with people who are tired of the perfectly filtered BS.
And then, who could forget Maggie Griffin, Kathy's mom?
Oh, Maggie, an icon.
Truly, Edward's article just captures her perfectly. Beloved for her dry humor, her unwavering Irish Catholic guilt, and her steadfast loyalty to Kathy.
And the boxed wine.
Yes, a true fan favorite who could often be found gracefully sipping boxed wine and delivering wonderfully blunt life advice, all delivered with that unmistakable Chicago accent. She was such a great counterpoint, wasn't she? So grounded and hilariously unimpressed by all the Hollywood nonsense Kathy was dealing with.
Maggie was the ultimate reality check, comrade. Just totally down to earth, no nonsense about fame. She provided constant comedic relief, but also this really relatable human anchor for the whole thing. Yeah. And yeah, the boxed wine, definitely iconic, a symbol of her glorious lack of pretension.
And we also had John Patrick Griffin, Kathy's dad.
Her dad, yeah.
Edward describes him as Kathy's kind, quiet father and steadfast emotional anchor. He was unfailingly supportive, though often understandably bemused and perhaps a little confused by the often surreal landscape of her Hollywood life.
That sounds right.
His gentle vibe offered this nice contrast, a different kind of warmth to Kathy's high energy. And as Edward notes, his passing during the show's run was a really powerful, genuinely sad moment for Kathy and for the audience, too.
John's quiet support, his gentle nature, it really did balance out Kathy's often intense, larger-than-life thing. His reactions, of just these quiet, slightly baffled looks at the absurdity of her job, were often gold.
Yeah.
And like Edward says, losing him added this real depth, real emotion to the series. A reminder that there are real lives, real losses underneath the shiny surface of celebrity.
Then you had her assistants. Crucial figures. First, Jessica Zajichek.
Right, the early one.
Edward calls her grounded and remarkably practical. She often played the straight woman, reacting to Kathy's chaos.
Things on track, presumably.
Yeah. And then later, Tiffany Reinhardt came along, described as loyal and consistently optimistic. She became this really key part of Kathy's inner circle, like part of the family, really.
They weren't just staff, were they?
No, not at all. It felt much more personal.
Those assistants were so vital to the show's whole vibe, comrade.
Yeah.
They were right there with Kathy, dealing with the crazy, unpredictable, often ridiculous day-to-day of her career. Their reactions, how they interacted with Kathy, it often mirrored how the audience felt. They were like our way into her weird world.
And finally, there was Tom Vess.
Ah, Tom. Tour manager.
Yeah, but also head of Team Griffin, and for a while, her secret boyfriend.
Right. That reveal.
Edward calls him cool-headed and unflappable. Just this calm presence dealing with Kathy's constant, often playful jabs. And yeah, finding out they were actually dating added this whole other interesting, funny layer to their interactions.
Tom's calmness next to Kathy's energy was always funny. He just seemed to take it all in stride. And yeah, the slow reveal of the romance gave you a deeper look at their dynamic. Added a romantic angle, but always with Kathy's typical humor and self-awareness about it.
Edward's article also flags some specific examples from the show that really illustrate these points. Like he mentioned season 3, episode 3.
Okay, what was the one?
That was Kathy getting ready to perform on Rosie O'Donnell's lesbian cruise.
Right. Our family vacations.
Exactly. And Edward points out how that episode really showed her genuine connection with her trainer at the time, Jackie Warner.
From workout, yeah.
And also her really strong bond with her queer fan base. Edward actually calls it an example of queer solidarity.
That episode really does show how the show built this sense of community, of real connection. Griffin's embrace of her LGBTQ plus audience, how direct and real she was with them. It says a lot about her own outsider status in mainstream Hollywood.
And her alignment with other groups often on the fringes.
Exactly. People who don't always see themselves reflected in the mainstream narratives.
Then there's another one he mentions. Season 2, episode 5, Vegas, baby.
Oh, I remember that when she took her parents.
Yeah. She brought Maggie and John along for a gig in Vegas. And that episode just perfectly mixed those relatable, funny family dynamics we talked about with the constant kind of frantic, behind-the-scenes hustle the show always showed.
That episode nailed the show's ability to blend the personal and the professional, didn't it? You see the non-glamorous reality of travel, the stress of getting ready for a show.
Right next to the genuinely sweet and hilarious stuff with her parents.
Yeah, it highlighted that sometimes awkward, but always fascinating collision between her normal family life and her totally bizarre job.
And this connects to another really insightful theme Edward brings up in the article, the idea of chosen family.
Important concept.
Kathy's really close, supportive relationships with her assistants, her staff, Edward notes many of them were gay men and her fans. It created this vital support network.
Which stood in stark contrast to how isolating elite celebrity can often be.
Exactly. Edward frames it really powerfully as a kind of politics of care, visibility, and shared struggle.
That chosen family idea is absolutely key to understanding Griffin's appeal, comrade. And the deeper messages under the reality show's surface. It really highlights the value of real human connection, building support systems outside the traditional, often exclusive structures.
Especially for people who feel like outsiders.
Right. Misfits within the more conventional social scenes. It speaks to that deep human need for belonging, for mutual understanding in a world that often tries to divide us up.
And the show, crucially, never romanticized her work. It always showed the hustle, right? The constant, exhausting grind. Always chasing the next gig, the next opportunity in that super fickle entertainment world.
Yeah, it wasn't pretending it was easy.
No, and it was always presented with that trademark D-list honesty, never trying to pretend she was living some effortless, charmed life.
That raw portrayal of the hustle was so important, comrade. It demystified the whole entertainment industry illusion. It showed the actual hard work, the constant pitching, the endless networking.
The stuff people don't want you to see.
Exactly. The often unglamorous, even humiliating parts of trying to make it and stay relevant in Hollywood. Her honesty about being D-list. Her open ambition to climb the ladder. That resonated with so many viewers who know what it's like to chase their own dreams against tough odds.
Edward's article connects that hustle really smartly to the idea of surviving and even mocking fame when you're locked out of the A-list.
Right. It's like she found a way to not just put up with the industry's BS, but to actually use her outsider position to critique it.
Yeah, leverage it.
Totally. Launch this potent, often a hilarious critique of its core values, its power structures.
It's like by not being fully accepted by the A-list gatekeepers, she ironically got more freedom.
Precisely, comrade. She had the space to comment on the ridiculousness from the outside, offering this brilliant satirical take on the very system that sometimes seemed to shut her out. Her humor wasn't just for survival. It was a vehicle for really sharp social commentary, holding up a mirror to the whole celebrity circus.
And we can't forget her just constantly pushing boundaries. Edward rightly highlights what he calls the radical act of being unapologetically visible.
Especially as a woman, right?
Especially as a woman getting older in an industry that's notoriously ageist and obsessed with a very narrow idea of beauty.
Yeah, in an industry that hammers women about looking young, conforming to these rigid beauty standards. Griffin's continued defiant visibility, her refusal to shut up or fit in, that is radical. She carved out her space by being loud, funny, and undeniably there, refusing to be pushed aside.
You know, it's interesting, though, this whole D-list struggle wasn't completely without rewards from the system itself. She actually won 2 Primetime Emmy Awards for My Life on the D-list.
That's right. Outstanding reality program, I think.
Yeah, Which is pretty major, especially when you think the show is often, subtly and sometimes not so subtly making fun of the very establishment that gives out those awards.
Those Emmy wins are fascinating, comrade. They really testify to the show's quality, its impact. It clearly resonated with audiences, but also maybe surprisingly with parts of the industry too. It suggests her subversive approach didn't totally block her from getting that kind of critical acclaim.
And beyond the reality show, she's had major success elsewhere too. She's won 2 Grammy Awards for Best Comedy Album.
Which is huge in the comedy world.
Absolutely not easy to do. And just to underline her relentless drive and impact, she holds a Guinness World Record.
For what?
For the most televised stand-up comedy specials by any comedian, ever.
Wow. That's incredible.
The sheer volume of work just speaks volumes about her persistence, her impact on comedy.
Those awards, that record, they really highlight her dedication to her craft, her ability to connect with people across different platforms. That Guinness record especially, it just screams tireless work ethic and this deep commitment to stand-up as her main thing, her main way of expressing herself and commenting on things.
Okay, now, Conrad, let's enrich this a bit. Let's weave in some of those specific stories, those anecdotes from the other sources we looked at. They really bring this D-list era and her career to life.
Yeah, let's do it.
You remember that Kathy Forever clip with a super young Ariana Grande, like 13 years old, on My Life on the D-list?
Vaguely, yeah. What happened?
Well, Kathy's joking around, talking about getting a picture with her, and she says something like, I'm going to Photoshop this so I look 20 and she looks 9.
Classic Kathy.
Right. It's funny, but it's also like subtly touching on that self-aware commentary the show always had about image, about age, about the pressure in Hollywood.
That little moment is a perfect example, comrade. It's self-deprecating humor, but it's also a jab at the unrealistic, often damaging pressure to look a certain way, stay young forever in the entertainment world. Even in a quick joke, there's that layer of critique about Hollywood superficiality.
Then there's that great story from the Jay Leno fly clip. Remember her talking about doing stand-up on the pink flight?
Oh, yeah. Flying to Sydney for gay Mardi Gras.
Exactly. Performing stand-up on a plane full of people heading to Mardi Gras. It's just such a wild anecdote. It really shows her willingness to do unconventional gigs. And again, that deep connection she has with her LGBTQ plus fans.
That story just captures her spirit, doesn't it? Adventurous, committed to her audience, doing stand-up on a plane. It's not your typical gig, but it shows she'd literally go the extra mile or, 10,000 miles to connect with her people.
And in that same Jay Leno Fly interview, she jokes about wanting a Grammy nomination for her comedy CD. It was called Maya Angelou Live at first.
Which is hilarious in itself.
Right. It eventually comes out June 17th. But she jokes that the main reason she wanted the nomination was just so she could wear a pretty dress to this ceremony.
I love that.
It's such a funny, refreshingly normal take on awards shows and all the fuss around them.
That anecdote just shows her brilliant, down-to-earth attitude about fame. She's not afraid to admit that sometimes the motivation is just wanting to feel fancy for a night. It's so relatable compared to all the pretentious stuff you usually hear around awards season.
We also saw mentions in a few clips about her co-hosting CNN's New Year's Eve show with Anderson Cooper for years.
Right, that became a whole thing, a tradition.
Yeah, hugely popular, but also sometimes controversial, like the F-bomb incident she talked about in the Jay Leno Fly clip, dropping it live on CNN.
Oops. That New Year's Eve gig with Anderson Cooper really did become a cultural moment, didn't it? Mostly because their dynamic was so funny and unexpected.
Oil and water sometimes, but it worked.
It did. But those appearances also kind of highlighted her tendency to push buttons, push boundaries, sometimes with results she maybe didn't expect, especially live on air.
Our sources also mention her appearances on shows like Ellen, The View, and they hint at some complicated relationships with other people in the industry.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, there's that bit in the Women in the World interview where Kathy talks about Ellen DeGeneres apparently thinking Joan Rivers was mean.
The comedy philosophy clash.
Exactly. And how that difference maybe caused some friction between Kathy and Ellen, personally and professionally.
Those interactions, those conflicts, they show you the tangled web of relationships in Hollywood. It's not all air kisses.
Definitely not.
And it highlights how different people have very different ideas about what's funny, what's acceptable, what's professional. Griffin always speaking her mind, even if it meant disagreeing with powerful people. Well, that just cemented her rep as an outsider who wouldn't just play by the unwritten Hollywood rules.
And speaking of not playing by the rules, that source, Kathy Griffin's Controversies, lists several times she apparently got banned from shows or red carpets because of her comedy style. Her no-holds-barred approach.
Right. Too hot to handle for some.
Seems like it. And that pattern of facing consequences just really underlines how committed she was to her own voice, even when it cost her things professionally.
You could almost see those bans as a weird badge of honor for someone like Griffin, comrade. It shows she wasn't willing to compromise her artistic integrity, even if it meant getting shut out by parts of the mainstream media, which can be pretty cautious. She clearly prioritized her comedy over just being universally liked.
Of course, comrade, we have to talk about the fallout from that 2017 photo, the really controversial one.
Yeah, that was huge.
The Entertainment Tonight and Women in the World interviews touch on it. It was clearly a brutal time for her. Losing friends, she says something like 90% of them just vanished.
Wow.
Getting surprising support from people like Cat Williams, though. Facing a federal investigation. Even getting sued by a neighbor over something else entirely during that period. It was just immense upheaval.
That period absolutely marks a massive turning point in her career, comrade. The backlash was intense, vicious sometimes, and the professional consequences were real, damaging. It starkly shows the power and the danger of pushing boundaries in the public eye, especially in today's polarized climate.
And when things are politically charged.
Exactly. It also, maybe unintentionally, revealed who her real friends and allies were when things got really tough.
But what's really striking, comrade, is even in the middle of all that, she talks about going right back to her roots, back to stand-up, performing in smaller clubs, like the Laugh Factory, basically rebuilding her career from the stage up.
That resilience is incredible.
Isn't it? That dedication to her craft. It's pretty remarkable. Speaks volumes about her strength.
Her immediate reaction to that firestorm, comrade, it really shows her tenacity, her deep connection to stand-up as her core identity. Despite facing something that could have ended her career, she went right back to the stage, refused to be silenced, refused to let that one incident define her entire long career.
The Jay Leno Fly clip also gave us that little glimpse into other family projects. It mentioned her book, Official Book Club Selection.
Right.
And even Maggie's book, Tip It, which Kathy hilariously described as basically a salute to boxed wine.
Perfect.
Those little details, right? They just add more color to that complex, funny family dynamic that My Life on the D-List captured so well.
Those other projects definitely give you more insight into the personalities, the humor that made this show so engaging.
Yeah.
Maggie writing a book about boxed wine. It's just perfectly on brand for the persona we loved on screen. So unpretentious.
And one last thing, comrade. In the Le Batard Show interview, Kathy talks openly about fighting with network executives.
Oh, really? During the D-List run?
Yeah. Fighting for raises, for more creative control. And this connects right back to that underlying theme in the show, challenging power structures.
Yeah.
Even in her own contract talks.
Her willingness to advocate for herself, to push back against the usual TV industry power plays, even in boring stuff like contract talks. It fits perfectly with the show's portrayal of her challenging the celebrity status quo. It suggests that D-List honesty wasn't just for the cameras, it was how she operated behind the scenes, too.
And just to tie it all up, comrade, the IMDb entry for My Life on the D-List confirms those 2 Emmy wins we mentioned. And it notes the show got nominated multiple other times, too, over its run.
Right.
Which just reinforces the point that even though it was often critical and satirical about Hollywood, the show itself got significant formal recognition from the industry. It wasn't just a cold hit.
Those Emmys, the nominations,
Yeah.
they're a clear sign of the show's impact, its quality as TV. Even if it operated outside the usual celebrity PR machine.
Okay, comrade. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the main things we should take away? It feels really clear that My Life on the D-List was way more than just another disposable reality show.
Absolutely.
It was this really smart, really funny, often surprisingly touching look at the whole celebrity world. The power dynamics nobody talks about, the challenges faced by people outside the A-list inner circle, especially women trying to make it in that space.
Definitely, comrade. This show's humor, that sharp, self-deprecating wit, it functioned as this really effective form of rebellion against the fakeness of celebrity. And Griffin just insisting on being visible, refusing to be anyone but herself, that felt radical in an industry demanding conformity.
She used that D-List platform brilliantly.
She really did, to deliver this insightful, hilarious, and ultimately pretty profound commentary on what fame even means in our society today.
All right, comrade, here's a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on. Think about how reality TV, which gets dismissed so often as just fluff, right? Meaningless entertainment.
Yeah, often unfairly.
how it can sometimes, maybe unexpectedly, give us real insights into power structures, into the complexities of fame in our media-soaked world. What does Kathy Griffin's journey, the way it was captured so honestly and hilariously on My Life on the D-List, what does it tell us about who gets seen? Who gets power?
And crucially, how can those hierarchies, which seem so fixed sometimes, actually be challenged?
Right, how can they be subverted, maybe even brought down, even just through the simple act of laughter?
That's a great point to end on, comrade. Griffin's work, especially My Life on the D-List, really pushes us to question our assumptions about celebrity culture and to think about all the different ways people navigate and sometimes critique the systems of power around us.
For its unflinching, often hilarious portrayal of the contradictions baked into the entertainment industry, and for Kathy Griffin's relentless comedic class struggle against the Hollywood machine. We, your comrades at Marxists at the Movies, give Kathy Griffin, My Life on the D-List, a truly revolutionary 5 out of 5 hammer and sickles.
Hear, hear. A totally fitting rating, comrade, for a show that was unique, groundbreaking, and made you think, all while making you laugh. It dared to challenge things with wit and real authenticity.
This is Marxists at the Movies.
Scene opens, white lights dim down low.
Thank you for listening to the Marxists at the Movies podcast.
Cinema whispers
Don't forget to
where
like and
truths can
comment.
grow.